Dear story lovers, welcome to Malawi Storyteller, where you find different stories, novels, and movie recaps. Please subscribe, share, like, and tell us your thoughts in comments section. The son they abandoned become their biggest regret. Rain hammered the glass, a relentless rhythm against the house the night Noah arrived. Inside, the living room glowed with the amber light of a single lamp. Sarah cradled the infant, her movements slow and deliberate. Daniel stood inches away, his hands reaching out to touch the baby's fingers, his grip unsteady. The air in the room vibrated with the voices of guests, their laughter rising to swallow the sound of the storm. Eli stood apart, pressed against the cold plaster of the hallway wall. He watched the circle of light around his parents, their focus locked entirely on the newcomer. He took a single step toward them, hoping to catch a glance, but a guest surged forward, bumping his shoulder and shoving him deeper into the gloom. He stumbled, his back hitting the wall again. The laughter continued, louder now, filling every corner of the room. He stayed in the dark, watching the light, while the house celebrated a life that had already pushed him to the edge of the frame. 5 years passed, in a blur of shifting furniture and encroaching clutter. The house transformed, its floorboards now a minefield of plastic blocks, miniature cars, and scattered building sets. Every surface became a display for the new occupant. Eli moved through these rooms like a shadow, his presence barely registering against the backdrop of the family's daily routine. He stepped over a sprawling train track in the hallway, his feet finding the familiar, worn patches of carpet. In the living room, the air felt thick, stagnant, as if the oxygen were being pulled toward the center of the house. He stood by the doorway, watching Sarah and Daniel navigate the space. They moved with a frantic, constant energy. The house was full, yet the space around him remained hollow, a vacuum where his own voice had long since ceased to echo. A sudden, violent crash tore through the living room, the sound of ceramic meeting hardwood echoing off the walls. The sharp, splintering noise cut through the afternoon air. Sarah dropped her book and sprinted toward the sound, her feet thudding against the floor. She skidded to a halt in the doorway. A ceramic vase lay in pieces across the floor, white shards scattered like teeth in the center of the room. Noah stood in the middle of the mess, his eyes wide, his breath coming in short, jagged gasps. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as she stared at the ruin. She looked at the floor, then at Noah. Before she could utter a word, a shadow fell across the threshold. Eli stepped into the room, his eyes scanning the debris. Noah turned, his expression shifting from shock to a cold, calculated stillness. He raised a hand, pointing a steady finger directly at Eli. "It was Eli," Noah said, his voice devoid of tremor, perfectly practiced. The silence that followed was absolute, heavy enough to crush the air from the room. Sarah turned, her gaze snapping toward Eli with a sudden, sharp intensity. Daniel appeared behind her. Eli felt the blood drain from his face, leaving his skin cold and tight. He looked at the shards, then back at the faces of his parents. "I did not touch it," he whispered, the words barely escaping his throat. His voice cracked, thin and brittle against the heavy silence of the room. Daniel did not pause. He did not ask for a second perspective or wait for a coherent explanation. He moved with a sudden, violent surge of momentum, crossing the floor in 2 long, aggressive strides. The air shifted as he closed the distance. His hand swung through the arc of the room, a blurred motion that ended with a sharp, stinging crack against Eli's cheek. The force of the impact was absolute. Eli's head snapped to the side, his balance failing as he stumbled backward. He hit the doorframe with a dull thud, the wood biting into his shoulder. "Don't lie!" Daniel roared, his face twisted into a mask of raw, unreasoning anger. Eli pressed a hand to his burning skin, the heat radiating across his jaw. He glanced toward Noah, who had already turned away, his attention shifting back to a toy on the rug. In that singular, agonizing moment, the foundation of Eli's world fractured. Eli's fingers traced the throbbing heat on his cheek, He looked at Noah, who was already occupied with a toy, his posture relaxed and entirely unbothered. The contrast was sharp. The room felt suffocating, filled with the presence of people who had chosen their reality. Eli did not argue. He did not ask for justice. He simply turned away. His footsteps made no sound as he moved across the hardwood, passing the jagged ceramic pieces still scattered on the floor. He reached the threshold and stepped out into the hallway, the air cooling against his skin. He did not look back at the living room. He walked toward the front door. The latch clicked as he opened it, and the sound of the storm outside rushed in to meet him. He stepped over the threshold, pulling the door shut behind him. He walked away, leaving the broken vase and the family behind, moving into the rain without a single backward glance.